So I want to start with a quote today. To anyone I've offended, I just want to say, I reinvented electric cars, and I'm sending people to Mars in a rocket ship. Did you think I was also going to be a chill, normal dude?
Oh, man. That's from his Saturday Night Live monologue, right? Back in, 2021?
Yeah, exactly, 2021. And honestly, if you look past the late-night comedy setting, it is the absolute perfect thesis statement for what we're getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
Glad to be here.
So we all know the companies, right? Tesla, SpaceX, PayPal. But today, we're using Walter Isaacson's incredibly detailed biography as our source code. We really want to look under the hood at the psychological blueprint that built those empires.
Right, because this isn't just a timeline of his wealth or a list of his companies.
No, not at all. It's really a study of how extreme risk tolerance, a pretty brutally violent childhood, and this bizarre cosmic obsession all kind of combine to disrupt these massive stagnant industries.
Yeah, and my approach today is going to be connecting the dots that usually get lost in those daily headlines. We're going to trace the line from his survivalist upbringing in South Africa to his reliance on, isolated rule-based systems, all the way to disruptive concepts like the idiot index.
The idiot index. I love it.
It's so good. But yeah, we're looking for the precise mechanisms of his success and, frankly, the collateral damage that comes with it.
Yeah. And to understand that machinery, you really have to start at the crucible where his personality was forged. And that's his childhood in South Africa during the 1980s.
Right.
Because if you want to understand what his executives call his demon mode, you absolutely have to understand the physical and emotional violence that conditioned his baseline view of the entire world.
The environment was inherently volatile. And in certain ways, that violence was almost institutionalized. Like when he was 12, he was sent to this wilderness survival camp called a Veldschool.
Okay.
And Musk himself described it as a paramilitary Lord of the Flies.
Wow. Lord of the Flies is not a term you want associated with a summer camp.
Not at all. The instructors there deliberately gave the kids these tiny rations of food and water, specifically so they would fight over them. Bullying wasn't just tolerated by the adults, it was actively encouraged.
Like it was a virtue of toughness or something.
Exactly. Older kids would literally punch younger ones in the face just to steal their food. And Musk, who was, small and pretty socially awkward at the time, he got beaten up severely. He lost 10 pounds during that camp.
That is just awful. And the thing is, the schoolyard back home wasn't any better for him. There's this horrific story in the source material where a gang of boys hunted him down at recess. They kicked him in the head, pushed him down a flight of concrete stairs, and just beat him until his face was an unrecognizable swollen ball of flesh.
Yeah, he was hospitalized for a week after that.
A whole week. And he required corrective surgeries for decades afterward just to fix the damage. But, the craziest part to me, the physical violence actually pales in comparison to the psychological torment he faced at home.
It really does, because when he finally got out of the hospital from that severe beating, his father, Errol, actually sided with the bully.
Wait, really? He sided with the kid who put his son in the hospital?
Yes. He forced Elon to stand in silence for an hour while he just berated him, calling him an idiot, telling him he was worthless. His brother Kimball called it the worst memory of his life, just watching their father go ballistic with zero compassion.
That's just psychological torture.
It is. Errol had this real Jekyll and Hyde personality. He would spew unrelenting abuse for hours, and he proudly called his parenting style an extremely stern, streetwise autocracy.
Wow. And then you contrast that with his mother, May, who had a very pragmatic kind of hands-off style. She was working multiple jobs and basically telling the kids, you'll figure it out.
Right. Very independent.
Yeah. And then you throw in the DNA of his grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, who was this massive daredevil. The guy flew a single-engine plane from Africa to Australia.
Which is insane.
Totally insane. So you mix all that together, extreme independence, high risk, deep emotional volatility.
Okay, let's unpack this. It sounds like his mind basically developed an emotional circuit breaker.
How do you mean?
Well, to survive his father, he had to completely shut off his empathy and fear receptors. Like, it kept the system from frying, but it left him permanently disconnected from normal human warmth.
That's a really good way to put it. And that circuit breaker really became his permanent operating system. When you're raised in an environment of constant threat, you just become conditioned to believe that life is pain.
Right.
For Musk, peace and calm are unnatural. He feels most alive, most comfortable when a hurricane is coming. And because his physical and emotional reality was unbearable, he essentially built a new one in his head.
Yeah, he would retreat inwards so intensely that his parents actually thought he was deaf. They even had his adenoids removed because they thought there was a physical problem.
But he wasn't deaf. No. Yeah. He was just computing. He was completely zoned out. And as a teenager, he fell into this deep existential crisis. He started reading philosophers like Nietzsche, which he highly advises against for an angsty teenager, by the way.
Yeah, that's a one-way ticket to despair.
Exactly. That just caused him immense despair. But what pulled him out of the nosedive was science fiction. Specifically, Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
What's fascinating here is how that book fundamentally shifted his worldview. Like, the premise of the book is that a supercomputer finds the ultimate answer to the universe, and the answer is the number 42.
Right, but no one knows the question.
Exactly. No one knows what the actual question was, and that taught Musk a vital lesson that drives him to this day. He realized the universe is the answer, and our purpose must be to expand human consciousness so we can figure out what the right questions actually are.
That's so profound for a teenager to latch onto, and then he layers on Isaac Asimov's robot stories on top of that.
Yeah.
So specifically the Zeroth Law.
Oh, the Zeroth Law, yeah.
Yeah, so in Asimov's universe, the standard rule is that a robot cannot harm a human. But the Zeroth Law supersedes that. It states a robot must not let humanity come to harm. Meaning, you prioritize the survival of the species over the well-being of any single individual.
Which is a huge distinction.
Massive. And Musk has explicitly stated that this fictional law is the foundational motivation for his work at SpaceX and with AI. And you can see how this pairs perfectly with his obsession with strategy video games, things like Civilization and Polytopia. I mean, he even coded and sold his own video game called Blaster when he was just 13 years old.
Yeah, and if you look closely at the psychological function of those hobbies, a really clear pattern emerges. Coding, physics, strategy games, these are all isolated rule-based systems.
Right.
They do not require emotional intelligence. They don't require empathy. They just require resource management and strategic logic. For a boy in an unpredictable, abusive home, a computer program offers a safe haven where the rules are absolute.
If you input the right code, you get the exact right output.
Exactly. He wasn't just playing games. He was learning how to reverse engineer success in a completely controllable environment.
But here's the danger, and I really want to push back on this. Did he misinterpret these sci-fi stories? I mean, authors like Asimov and Robert Heinlein, they were writing cautionary tales about the dangers of technology and hubris.
Right. They were warnings.
Yeah. They were warning about ignoring the individual for the sake of the collective. But it seems like Musk read them as literal business plans. He saw the dystopian warnings and thought, oh, I should build that, but I'll do it better.
That's spot on. He absorbed the scale of the ambition without absorbing the author's intended caution. And he took that massive rule-based ambition with him when he realized he couldn't, build an empire of human consciousness in a vacuum.
He needed cash.
He needed capital. He needed a sandbox where the rules of physics could be tested against the rules of business. And in the 1990s, that sandbox was North America.
Okay, let's actually clear up a persistent internet myth right now based on the sources.
Yeah.
He didn't arrive in Canada flush with cash from some emerald mine fortune.
No, not at all.
He arrived with just $4,000. He worked terrible odd jobs. Like, he was cleaning out the inside of a lumber mill boiler in a hazmat suit. Eventually, he makes his way down to Silicon Valley and applies that video game strategy mindset to the real world with his first company, Zip2, which he started with his brother Kimball.
And the conditions at Zip2 were a direct extension of his survivalist childhood. I mean, they slept under their desks in this tiny office. They showered at the local YMCA. They ate nothing but cheap fast food, like Jack in the Box.
Classic startup grind,
yeah,
but taken to the extreme.
Taken way too far. And the physical intensity of South Africa carried over, too. They would literally get into bloody fistfights on the office floor over coding and business decisions.
Wait. Actual fistfights.
Yes. Kimball once bit off a chunk of Elon's flesh during a wrestling match in the office.
Oh my God, that's insane. But, they did sell Zip2, and Musk took his winnings to start X.com, which later merges to become PayPal. And the mechanics of this pivot are super fascinating.
Yeah, the banking pivot.
Right. So he had this insight during a college internship at Scotiabank. He looked at the legacy banking system and realized it was fundamentally dumb. Like in the 90s, banks were still treating money as if it were physical paper requiring archaic batch processing overnight.
Yeah, people forget how slow banking used to be.
Exactly. But Musk looked at it through the lens of a coder and said money is just data on a server. It should move instantly.
And this is also where his absolute refusal to compromise really solidifies, because at Zip2, he was ousted as CEO by venture capitalists who wanted, adult supervision.
Oh, right.
And he vowed never to let that happen again. So at X.com, he was fiercely protective of his control. He insisted on the name X.com over PayPal, despite focus groups and his own team absolutely hating it.
He loves the letter X. He really does. He even engaged in a literal late-night arm wrestling match with his co-founder, Max Levchin, over which coding language to use.
Which is such a funny image. And the best part is he actually lost that arm wrestling match, but he still forced his engineering team to rewrite all the code his way anyway.
Of course he did.
Yeah, his intensity just completely blinded him to the room. So while he was on his honeymoon, his executives staged a coup and ousted him as CEO.
Right, while he was away.
Yeah. And around the exact same time, he contracted a near-fatal case of falciparum malaria while traveling. So what's his takeaway from a corporate coup and nearly dying of a parasite? Vacations will kill you.
It perfectly illuminates his unique risk profile. Like, in the business world, most entrepreneurs are risk mitigators. They build a successful company, they cash out, and then they look for ways to protect their wealth and limit their downside exposure.
Makes sense.
But Musk is the exact opposite. He is a risk amplifier.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like if you're playing poker, the standard strategy is to carefully count cards, manage your stack, and only bet big when the odds are overwhelmingly in your favor.
Right, you play it safe.
Yeah. But Musk plays Texas Hold'em by going all in on every single hand, losing, buying more chips, and doing it again until he wins. It's a strategy that looks like absolute madness to a traditional CEO until you realize his secret. He refuses to ever leave the table.
That's a great analogy. So after cashing out of PayPal for around $250 million, his addiction to that extreme risk required a much bigger table. Software was just too easy for him now.
He needed higher stakes.
Exactly. He turned his attention to the physical world, applying his disruptive frameworks to heavy manufacturing. He decided he wanted to send a greenhouse to Mars just to inspire the public about space exploration.
Which means he needs a rocket. So he literally flies to Russia to try and buy cheap, decommissioned ICBM missiles. He's sitting in these meetings with Russian aerospace officials, and they think he's an absolute joke.
Oh, they mocked him relentlessly.
Yeah. One Russian official literally spits on his shoes and tells him he's full of it. They mock him and try to completely gouge him on the price.
And getting mocked by the Russians was actually the catalyst for his entire aerospace empire. It made him angry, and it forced him to rely on what he calls first principles thinking.
Which is a term that gets thrown around a lot.
It does. When people say first principles, it sounds like, standard corporate jargon. But mechanically, it means boiling a complex problem down to its fundamental, undeniable truths.
Right, so he's on the flight home from Moscow, and instead of asking how to negotiate a 10% discount on a Russian rocket, he looks at a spreadsheet and asks, what is a rocket actually made of?
Just the raw materials.
Exactly. It's aerospace grade, aluminum, titanium, copper, and carbon fiber. So he asks, what do those raw materials cost on the commodities market? And it turned out the raw materials were about 2% of the cost of a finished rocket.
That's a huge gap.
A massive gap. The remaining 98% was just the cost of human bureaucracy and inefficiency. And that gap is what he dubbed the idiot index.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the idiot index is a brilliant diagnostic tool. It calculates the cost of the raw materials of a product versus the cost of the finished product. If the idiot index is incredibly high, it means the manufacturing process is bloated with unnecessary rules.
Right.
So instead of buying rockets, he just starts SpaceX. He recruits a brilliant amateur rocket builder named Tom Mueller, sets up a testing site in McGregor, Texas, and implements this move fast and blow things up ethos.
And the mechanics of how they cut costs down in Texas are just mind-blowing. They completely ignored the sterile, slow-moving environment of legacy aerospace companies like Boeing or Lockheed.
Oh, totally.
Like, when a rocket fuel tank got a dent during testing, Musk didn't order a new $1 million tank to be fabricated. He told his engineers to get inside it with hammers and literally pound the dent out.
That is so scrappy.
It gets better. When they needed valves to mix rocket fuel, traditional aerospace suppliers wanted hundreds of thousands of dollars and a whole year to deliver them. Musk's engineers went and bought heavy-duty valves used in commercial car washes, modified them, and used them on the rocket for a fraction of the cost.
Car wash valves on a rocket.
They even had a cow cam to watch the local cattle scatter when they intentionally blew up engines on the test stand to find their absolute limits.
He forces engineers to question every single military specification and requirement. His hard rule was that unless a requirement was literally dictated by the laws of physics, it was just a suggestion that should be challenged.
That's his first principles thing again.
Exactly. Legacy aerospace companies were totally paralyzed by silos. Designers were in one building, engineers in another, manufacturers in a third. It took months for a blueprint to become a physical part.
Oh yeah, the bureaucracy.
Right. So Musk brought them all into the exact same room on the factory floor. If a designer drew a part that was too hard to machine, the manufacturer could just lean over the desk and tell them to fix it immediately.
He also fundamentally disrupted the industry's financial model. Like for decades, aerospace ran on cost-plus contracts. If a government pays you your total costs plus guaranteed 10% profit, your financial incentive is to make the project take as long as possible and cost as much as possible.
Which is why the idiot index was so high.
Exactly. So Musk sued NASA to force competitive bidding, pioneering fixed-price contracts. SpaceX basically said, we will deliver this cargo for X amount of dollars. If we go over budget, we eat the loss.
And that forced extreme efficiency. But, the idiot index has a dark side. We celebrate it when it results in a successful rocket launch for a fraction of the historical cost. But he applied those exact same physics to human psychology.
Yes. We celebrate the idiot index when it works, but setting physically impossible deadlines just to manipulate your employees isn't just demanding. As Tom Mueller noted in the sources, it is corrosive and deeply demoralizing.
Yeah, the human toll is massive.
People were sleeping under their desks, missing their children's birthdays, just working themselves to the bone. Musk treats human burnout as an acceptable raw material cost on his spreadsheets. He's calculating the fatigue of a metal valve right next to the fatigue of his lead engineers. Expecting people to operate like machines that just need to be pushed to their ultimate tensile strength, it leaves a massive wake of collateral damage.
It really does. And he didn't contain this relentless meddling energy just to rockets. He brought the exact same approach to a tiny startup he invested in called Tesla.
Right, and it's important to note for the record here that Musk was not the original founder of Tesla. Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning were.
A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. Musk came in as the primary funder and chairman after seeing a prototype electric car called the Zero. And the initial plan that Eberhard had was very standard for the auto industry at the time. You stay lean and you outsource the parts.
Which is sensible.
Right. They were going to cheaply cobble together a car using a body from Lotus, an English sports car maker, and just drop an electric battery inside. From a traditional business standpoint, this makes perfect sense. Limit your overhead.
But Musk's brain doesn't accept off-the-shelf compromises. He just could not stop interfering with the design. Because he realized that if you want to convince the entire world to abandon gasoline, your first electric car cannot look like a glorified, eco-friendly golf cart.
Right, no one's going to buy that.
Exactly. It has to be an object of intense desire. People had to want it because it was the best car in the world, not just because it was good for the environment.
So the extreme micromanagement begins. He forces the engineers to lower the doors by 3 inches because he felt it required a contortionist act to get in.
Which messed up all their testing.
Oh, completely. Eberhard argued this would force them to completely redo all the crash testing, but Musk didn't care. He hated the headlights, saying they made the car look bug-eyed, so he changed them, which added $500,000 to the cost.
Wow.
He insisted on using expensive carbon fiber instead of fiberglass. And my favorite one, he demanded touch-activated electric door handles that sit flush with the car's body instead of standard mechanical latches, entirely for aerodynamic purity and aesthetic sleekness.
And Eberhard argued bitterly against all of this vertical integration. To Eberhard, standard door handles worked perfectly fine, and spending millions to re-engineer them wouldn't sell a single extra car.
Right, it's just a door handle.
But to Musk, every tiny friction point mattered for the brand. This conflict was immense. It drove up costs astronomically, it delayed production for months, and it caused massive internal screaming matches between Musk and Eberhard.
Just like the fistfights at Zip 2.
Exactly. The company was actually on the verge of bankruptcy and was only saved because Musk aggressively secured a massive new round of venture capital funding.
So, think about a project you're working on right now. If you're managing a project, the standard playbook tells you to be an Eberhard. You outsource, you stay lean, you hit your budget, and you get the product to market.
The safe route.
Yeah. But Musk's playbook says the exact opposite. You break the budget, you ruin the schedule, and you completely infuriate your team if it means the flush door handle is absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
It's a terrifying way to work, but it forces us to ask what kind of leader actually creates a paradigm shift.
Well, Eberhard wanted to build a car company. Musk wanted to force a global transition to sustainable energy. And he was willing to burn through his own money, his own health, and his relationships to achieve it.
Which really brings us full circle to the core dichotomy of Elon Musk. On one hand, you have a man who is driven by this profound, almost sweeping cosmic love for the future of human consciousness.
Yeah, going back to the Asimov and Hitchhiker's Guide influence.
Exactly. He looks at those stories and genuinely believes he has a mandate to save humanity from extinction by making us multiplanetary. Yet, simultaneously, he often lacks the most basic interpersonal empathy for the actual individual humans standing right in front of him.
It is the defining paradox of his life. The emotional trauma he endured as a child created this thick, protective shell. Those scars made him incredibly callous to the feelings of others, yes. But they also made him utterly fearless in the face of risks that would paralyze a normal executive.
Because he'd already survived the worst.
Exactly. Because he survived his father's psychological torture and the brutal violence of the schoolyard, a failing rocket company or a delayed car production line simply doesn't register as a fatal threat to his nervous system.
He just pushes all the chips back into the center of the table. He expects the hurricane, so he builds windmills.
Which leaves us with a rather uncomfortable question to ponder.
Let's hear it.
We all benefit from these massive leaps in engineering. We want the rockets to Mars. We want the electric vehicle revolution to combat climate change. But when you look at the emotional wreckage left in his wake, the broken relationships, the burned out engineers, the total lack of work-life balance, and that demon mode required to force these physically impossible deadlines into reality, is it actually possible to change the world on this massive of a scale if you are a healthy, well-adjusted person? Or does the future strictly belong to those who are running so fast from their own demons that they accidentally drag the rest of humanity forward with them?
Did you think I was also going to be a chill, normal dude? I guess that answers that. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll see you next time.